again, Alyssa. Having a lot of fun with these little weekly series.
Yeah,
Are
it's
you
really fun.
enjoying the conversations?
Yeah, and it's a chance, with a remote team, it gives us that extra opportunity to, talk about things that we all like to nerd out about, so it's fun. Yeah.
All right. Well, this week, so last week we talked a little bit about users, and this week we're talking about brand. And at RedTree, we always like to start with users and then introduce the brand, right? Because we look at a website as the user being the hero who it is that we're talking to. But then the next phase of that is brand. And we say all the time that we build out brand-led websites. What in the world does that mean? And I'm sure that everyone is tired of me explaining what it is that means. So I'd love to know from your perspective as the strategist, when we say brand-led websites, what does that mean for you?
Yeah, so I think it's sort of about the personality of the business. So, going beyond, the colors, the fonts, how things look and feel, I think a lot of people think of branding in the visuals that they're using, their logo is their brand. And to me, it's more the personality. So, how do you make users feel? What's your style of communication? Do you use humor? Are you more polished and cleaned up? Or are you able to have those rough edges show and talk to your users like conversational instead of very formal? So, all of these are all okay. Obviously, I lean more towards the conversational and rough around the edges, but just identifying that about your business, like what is the personality? How do you want users to feel? Um, yeah, just the vibes that you give off through everything. So not only the visual elements that you're using, but the content, the words that you're using. And I think it goes beyond your website. So it's even if you're at a conference, how do you show up? How do you dress? How do you talk to people when you're at the conference? So yeah.
It's so true. I can't tell you how many different times. I mean, I love that you just brought up like the conference. Like we in marketing, we call this like omni-channel. So like how are you presenting on social? How are you presenting on the website? How are you presenting in person? And sometimes it's almost like you've got three different people, right? It's like your high school friend where it's like, am I going to get the wild child or am I going to get the mom or am I going to get like the super professional person?
Yeah.
So I love that you sort of like tied all of those together because they do sometimes, they just don't mesh.
Yeah. And then it's confusing to your user. So I think that's probably one of the biggest mistakes that I see in terms of marketing pieces, whether it's like a brochure or an email or your website. If you're on a sales call with somebody or if you've heard about somebody, like there was a referral or something, and then they go to your website and it's all buttoned up and very jargon heavy and you're sort of like, well, that's not what, so and so said about this business. They were supposed to be like this very helpful, empathetic partner, and then I'm coming here and it's, very, too polished, too buttoned up, and it's kinda confusing to the user, so
Yeah, 100%. So, along those lines, actually, what's a common mistake that you see people making whenever they're trying to incorporate their brand inside of.
yeah, so I think number 1 would be only focusing on the visuals, so thinking, if I use the right color palette and the right logo, that's my brand. I think that's one of the biggest mistakes. It goes all the way down to, what is the button language? Like, what does the button say? You can infuse your personality to that, and you can reach your user where they are just by the language that you use for your button or the color that you use for the button. And it's both those things together, not one or the other. I think that's number 1. And then I think the other one is what I mentioned before is just not being true to your brand. You need to identify your brand in terms of how you can actually show up and then also what your user needs. So it's not all about, and I know we talked about this with users before, it's not all about the way that you talk about this or the way you feel about your services. It's really meeting them where they are and making sure that you're leading them along the way. And, having your brand voice, your brand personality infused into that, it just makes for better relationships, shortens sales times because people already know oh, these are the people for me. They get it. They're my people, they speak the same language as I do, they know what I need, so it shortens everything, and it just makes those relationships a lot stronger.
It's interesting, we're doing a small branding exercise right now for one of our clients to, sort of build out their website. And, you just mentioned like meeting them where they are. And these people pride themselves on being sort of the hero of their community, right? They want to lean, they want to provide without them being asked. And it was something super simple. We were looking at the existing site and one of their team members said, "Hey, listen, in order to request an appointment, because it's a health clinic, request an appointment, someone has to call." And, like, we have a few amount of like, we have a subset of neurodivergent and shy and, like, people that they're not gonna call or they're gonna have to find someone else, and it's really hard for them to call if we had some kind of a form fill out. And I don't know about you, but I'm sitting there, I'm going, like, we weren't thinking enough about the user and something as simple as that, right? Like, the clinic wanted them to call, it was more efficient. But when we're thinking about the user, and their brand is really focused on their audience. Like, we weren't thinking about that as an overall.
Yeah. And I think too, when we were doing the branding exercise, what kept coming up over and over again was we want to make it easy for people to access our services. We'll pick someone up and drive them to the mobile clinic if we have to. We make sure it's not on a hill because then some folks might not be able to walk up the hill. So they're thinking about that in the ways they're showing up in the community, and then maybe not connecting those dots on the website. So, yes, something as simple as creating a form that's really easy for someone to fill out and making the messaging really clear of like what they can expect next. So after they fill out the form, they get that message that's like, okay, someone from our team's going to be reaching out to you and we'll get you all set up. Something as simple as that, it just is a way to infuse their brand into every interaction that they have.
Yeah. Is there like a low effort that, along those lines, like, is there a low effort that you could think to tell people if they're looking to incorporate their brand more in their website that they could do like today?
Yeah, yeah. So I would love everybody to go through our exercise, the brand archetype exercise that we did with that client. But I know that that's not possible. And, it's really easy to just even look at your website really quickly, read it out loud and see like, how is it coming off? Does it sound like you? Does it sound like you're how you would actually talk to someone in the community? Or does it seem too stuffy, too polished? Go through and even just your headlines, like just touch every headline on your homepage first. And then you can see, those are easy, quick wins because those are the first things people are seeing. So, um, yeah, my dogs are getting upset.
They're protecting their home, which they should be doing.
Yes, that's their job.
Yeah, I love that. It's something in marketing, especially from a content creation standpoint that like I know I forget, but if you say something out loud or if you're like really thinking about going through it, you'll see the missteps or you'll see the misalignment in your brand even just by saying some of those things out loud and seeing how it comes out. You might just naturally change some stuff based off of the way you're saying. It's a great suggestion. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, and you can't, even outside of that brand archetype exercise, if you wanna do even I think there's quizzes online that you can take for that, or even if you just wanna write down on paper, who do you wanna be to your user? Do you wanna be like a friendly neighbor, a friend? Do you wanna be an authority, someone that's guiding them? Even if you just write that down on paper and have that be sort of your guide of then when you read those headlines, do I sound like a friendly neighbor or do I sound like a business person? So I think it's a good place to start.
But also, as we talked about sort of last week too, so I always look at brand based off of the Brand Gap, which is a book written by Michael something. No, Neil something. Anyways, it's called The Brand Gap. And they always say your brand is not what you say it is, it's what they say it is. So
Yeah.
another thing to really look at and think about too is when people refer you, when people give testimonials, like what are they saying in that exercise as well? And really seeing if that's sort of mashing up and if your website is saying the same thing that a testimonial. So, for example, if your testimonial is like, these guys are amazing partners, but you don't have anything that feels like a partnership, feels like a collaboration, and it's just a, hey, look how great we are, there's a huge misalignment.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know we were talking a lot about like it's not all about your visuals, but I think too the designer in me wants to bring it back that pairing it with your visuals is so important too because like take Ben& and Jerry's, for example. Like, Ben& and Jerry's is ice cream, but they have this activism side to them, and even on their items that are not about the activism, they have sort of this vibe of, like, a protest. Like, they have, like, signs that people are hanging up or stickers that they're throwing on something, and so you reinforce it with some of the design choices that you make too, and when your messaging and your design are really working together to communicate who your brand is, I think it's just yeah, it's just perfect. Yeah.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Alyssa. And for anyone who is watching the series, come back next week. We're going to be talking to Kate, our designer, about competitors. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.